Other stressors in the physical environment. In this concluding section, we will briefly examine the role of 3 further environmental stressors that promote aggressive behavior: crowding, noise, and air pollution. Crowding refers to the perception of spatial density as unpleasant and aversive. Note that crowding is a subjective experience, whereas density is a physical concept that is defined in terms of the number of people per space unit. This distinction is important because the same level of spatial density may give rise to feelings of crowding in some people but not in others. Similarly, the same level of spatial density may be perceived as pleasantly busy in some settings, e.g. at an open-air concert, and unpleasantly crowded in others, e.g. in a packed train compartment. Whereas density cannot be linked to aggression in a conclusive fashion, crowding has been found to increase the likelihood of aggression in a variety of settings, such as bars, prisons, and overcrowded living conditions with families. Experimental evidence suggests that the aggression-enhancing effect of crowding is mediated by negative affective arousal, elicited by the subjective perception of spatial constraint. Furthermore, it seems that men are more likely than women to respond to crowding with aggressive behavior. This finding is consistent with the negative affect explanation, in that men have consistently been found to claim more personal space than women, and are therefore more likely to be adversely affected by restrictions of their territorial claims. Noise is another environmental stressor linked to aggression. As an aversive stimulus, noise can trigger or reinforce aggressive behavior. In a study by Green and O'Neill, 1969, participants were shown either a violent or a nonviolent film and subsequently instructed to deliver electric shocks to another person as a punishment for errors on a learning task. While they administered the shocks, half of the participants in each group were exposed to a loud noise. It was found that the noise manipulation led to higher aggression only among those who had previously watched the violent film. Another consequence of noise is that it impairs the person's tolerance of frustration, thereby increasing aggressive behavioral tendencies following a frustration. Thus, noise operates as a reinforcer of aggressive response tendencies in individuals who are already in a state of increased readiness for aggressive behavior. However, it does not seem to be the noise per se that facilitates aggression, but rather the fact that noise is often an uncontrollable aversive event. If the noise was perceived as controllable by the individual, its impact on aggressive behavior was substantially reduced. Finally, air pollution has been found to be a reinforcer of aggressive response tendencies in a similar way as crowding and noise. Studies examining the effect of cigarette smoke on aggression found that individuals exposed to cigarette smoke showed more hostility toward others, not only towards the person producing the smoke, as well as aggressive behavior, than a control group not exposed to smoky conditions. The role of unpleasant smells in promoting aggression was examined in the context of the negative affect escape model. This model predicts that moderate levels of an unpleasant smell lead to an increase in aggression, while aggression levels drop again as the unpleasant smell becomes more intense. Support for this prediction was found in a study by Rodden et al. 1979. However, the comparative review of the evidence by Evans 2019 suggests that the effect of air pollution on aggression and violence is much less pronounced than the effect of high temperature. Summary: alcohol, social exclusion, aggression-related cues, availability of firearms, and high temperature have been identified as situational or environmental variables that have a significant influence on aggressive behavior. More limited evidence is available on the impact of other external stressors, such as crowding, noise, and air pollution. But it appears that these features of the physical environment also increase or reinforce aggressive behavior. The claim that people are more likely to act aggressively when under the influence of alcohol is supported by a large body of research. Alcohol affects aggressive behavior through both pharmacological and psychological effects. The pathway from alcohol consumption to aggressive behavior seems to be mediated by attentional deficits and moderated by situational factors such as provocation. Under the influence of alcohol, individuals' attention capacity is impaired and they only attend to the most salient stimuli. Awareness of the normative constraints that inhibit aggressive behavior is reduced, undermining an important mechanism in the self-regulation of aggressive behavior. There is consistent evidence that being rejected or excluded by others precipitates aggressive behavior. Social exclusion thwarts vital needs for belonging, self-esteem, and control, and aggression is a common response to this experience. Whereas the immediate social pain experienced when excluded by others is a reflexive response that is largely independent of personal or situational influences, individual and contextual factors affect the subsequent, more controlled processing of the exclusion experience. Chronic experience of social exclusion has long-term effects on psychological well-being and may explain individual differences in aggression. Situational cues, such as weapons or other violence-related primes, enhance the cognitive availability of aggression as a response option. The weapon's effect was strongest in individuals who were previously angered and who were therefore already in a state of heightened angry arousal. However, it has also been demonstrated in people who were in an affectively neutral state. Therefore, the mere presence of an aggression-related cue seems to increase the probability of an aggressive response. Higher rates of gun ownership have been linked to higher rates of homicide, especially against non-strangers. Men are more likely to own guns than are women, and guns provide a sense of power that is critical for masculine gender identity. Guns also affect aggressive behavior by acting as aggressive cues that increase the accessibility of aggressive thoughts. The effect of temperature on aggression has been demonstrated across different methodological paradigms. Comparing hot versus cold regions or hot versus cold time periods within a region, it was found that aggression, especially violent crime, is generally higher under conditions of high temperature, supporting the heat hypothesis. Experimental studies that have explored differences in aggression as a function of variations in temperature also provide some support for the heat hypothesis, but the evidence is less conclusive. The general proposition that stressors in the physical environment cause negative affective arousal, which in turn gives rise to aggressive responses, is further supported by studies that have looked at crowding, noise, and poor air quality in relation to aggression. These stressors can both elicit and intensify aggressive behavior.